Julius Peppers, the only player on the team with over 100. He was with a team from 2002 to 2018. He's got 107 to lead the team. By far the best there. Welcome to Just the Stats NFL, the show that covers the NFL statistical leaders from the all-time greats to the current players leading the NFL. I'm Ernie Jennings, your host, and today we're going to go back to the NFC, specifically the NFC South. We're going to look at the Carolina Panthers today. So I'm covering every team as we head into the 2025 season, and there's only 22 days left before the first regular season game of 2025. Can't wait for that. We got some more preseason games coming up starting tomorrow, so that'll be good. Get a little closer look at some of the players. Like I said, today we're going to look at the Carolina Panthers. We're going to look at the greatest Panthers, the greatest players on that team, the players from 2024, in fact. And then as well, we'll look at their upcoming season and see where they stand there too. So that's what we're going to be doing. So let's start with as I said, with the team. So the Panthers finished third in the division, which was actually the same record as the last place New Orleans Saints. But because of tiebreakers, the Panthers were third, the Saints were fourth. They both finished at 5-12. And interestingly enough, they were both 3-6 on the road, 2-6. 3-6 at home, 2-6 on the road, and 2-4 in the division. So Panthers 5-12, not too good, but again they had quarterback issues, which obviously they're hoping are solved. All right, so how do the Panther players of 2024 stand in relation to the greatest Panther players of all time and to the NFL as a whole? That's what we're going to find out right now in this episode of Just the Stats. So we'll begin with the coaches, as we always do. Ron Rivera, from 2011 to 2019, has the most wins ever by the team. He had 76, just beating out John Fox, who was the coach from 2002 to 2010, who had 73. After that, there's a huge drop. It's no one's near. Now, Dave Canales, just the first year as a coach last season, went 5-12, so he's got 5 wins. Let's say that he could hit the 7-win mark. He would move into 5th place. Otherwise, he just needs 2 wins to move into 6th. So really, he's got a ways to go before we're talking about him moving up farther than that. Maybe next year. Hopefully, for his sake, he's still the coach. All right, let's get down into the team itself and look at the quarterbacks. Cam Newton, probably the best player on the team, one of the best players actually, as far as quarterback goes. Cam Newton from 2011 to 2021 ended his career with the Panthers with 29,725 yards. That's the highest total, and not really that high. It's not a number that can't be beat. Now, Bryce Young, only with 2 years now, he's got 5,280. So he's definitely on his way. If he can get his act together, which he seemed to the second half of last year, and he can be their quarterback for the future, he'll have a good chance. He only needs less than 3,100 yards to move into 4th all-time, passing Kerry Collins. So we'll watch that this season and see how that goes. Now, when it comes to touchdowns, as far as quarterbacks go, it's Cam Newton again with quite a big lead, 186 touchdowns to Jake Delhomme, who has 120. Bryce Young is already 5th with 26. He needs 22 to move into 4th place, and that's as far as he's going to get for probably 2 or 3 years before he can move up into 3rd spot. But already in 2 years, he's 5th in the team in 2 categories. Now, when we're looking at interceptions, again, Cam Newton, 113 interceptions in his career, which is the most. And this won't be a area where for Bryce Young. He's got 19 so far in his career, so it'd be years and years before he would ever get near that. And then last category, we'll look how many times the quarterback's been sacked. Well, as great a runner as Cam Newton was, and he was, as far as quarterbacks go, he was sacked 301 times, which is the most by far. Steve Berline was second with 191 sacks in his career. So that's the leaders in sacks. Bryce Young's already fourth in that category, and he'll stay in fourth unless he really gets sacked uh, quite a few times. He'd have to get sacked 65 times to move up, and if he does, that's terrible. So I don't expect that to see that. But he is being sacked at an average of about 45, so that's not good. You need to improve that line, and he needs to get that ball out of there quicker. All right, let's look at the running backs all time for the team. Jonathan Stewart, for number one quarter running back from 2008 to 2017, had 7,318 yards. So interestingly enough, they had a dual back here because D'Angelo Williams from 2006 to 2014. So a lot of overlapping years there. He was second with 6,846. And as I said, Cam Newton uh, was a great runner, not bad at quarterback all the way around, but really a good runner. He was third. So from 2011 to 2021, playing at the same time as these other two guys for some of this, he's third all time on the team with 5,036 yards. So pretty interesting numbers there. All right, that's yards. That's the top players. Now, currently, Chuba Hubbard is sixth with 3,175 yards for the team. He definitely has a chance to actually pass Christian McCaffrey, who's fourth with 3,980. So he really only needs a little over 800 yards, and he'll move all the way into fourth place. So with a good season or halfway decent season, that's highly possible. When we're looking at touchdowns, Cam Newton, as I said, uh, 63 touchdowns rushing to lead the team. Jonathan Stewart was second with 69. Actually, 51, 63 to 51. I'm sorry. Chuba Hubbard only has 22 right now. He'd need 11 to pass Christian McCaffrey for fourth. Chuba Hubbard's fifth right now. I don't know. Uh, I'm not sure he can get that. They just don't score enough, and it'd be some more than he's normally getting. So I will have to see, but I don't expect to see that. But the next year, if he's still with the team, he could do it. Now, when we're looking at wide receivers, well, that's Steve Smith stands out. Steve Smith from 2001 to 2013 had 12,197 yards to lead the team as far as yardage goes. Same when we're looking at receptions. He also led the team with 836 receptions. So he's definitely the number one guy there. Top tight end was Greg Olson, who's third all time with the team with 524 receptions and 6,463 yards. So pretty good. Christian McCaffrey, as far as running backs go, has 390 receptions, which leads the team as far as running backs go. And then the same as far as um, yards, he's got 3,292 to lead all running backs for the team. So three different players in the top 5 or 6 as far as that goes. All right, now we're looking at, interestingly, there's not really any current players. Adam Thielen, amazing, who's a very sneaky player. He's 35 though, so I don't know how much farther he'll go. But he's 16th on the team as far as receiving goes, with 1,629 yards. So there's nobody currently playing. It's going to be some years before anybody can get up this list and challenge, say, the top 4 players. When we're looking at touchdowns receiving, that is Steve Smith, who had 67, which is by far the most. Greg Olson as a tight end had 39. Um, that's the second best. And then again, Christian McCaffrey as a running back had 18. So those are your receivers, so forth. No real stand. I mean, obviously Christian McCaffrey's great, but he left the team after 2022. So that's the problem. Only Steve Smith hung around for 13 seasons to rack up all those yards. Um, need some players that'll stay with a team longer than just a year or two. All right, let's look at the defense. When we're looking at the defense, start with interceptions for the team. All time, Chris Gamble from 2004 to 2012 had 27 interceptions in his career, which is not that many. Uh, it's really a good chance that you could see um, somebody someday. Currently, there's nobody um, near that. J.C. Horn has 5, so uh, he's going to need to push a little bit harder to get farther up this list. And Xavier Woods also has 5. So they're your top 2 current players. All right. Looking at tackles for loss. When it comes to tackles for loss all time. Now here you got a great player, Julius Peppers. Julius Peppers, the only player on the team with over 100. He was with a team from 2002 to 2018. He's got 107 to lead the team. By far the best there. And really, there's nobody. Shaq Thomas was next best as far as current players. He was 8th with 54, but he's no longer with the team. He's with Buffalo now. So that drops you all the way down to the 15th player, Derek Brown, with only 28. So no one's near this number and won't be for years. And I don't expect to see even Derek Brown do that. So now when we're looking at sacks, again, it's Julius Peppers. Nobody over 100 sacks, but as far as this team goes. Julius Peppers had 97 sacks. Let me back up real quick and just say about Julius Peppers. He played for 3 teams, and like I said, for tackles for loss, he had 107 to lead the team. In his career, he had 175. So you got most of them, the majority of them anyway, with the Carolina Panthers. Julius Peppers is 5th all time in tackles for loss with 175. So pretty impressive career he's had there. He might move down a little bit. You've got a couple of players currently playing that will have a chance to move up there. Levante David and Cameron Jordan. So we'll see what happens there. Von Miller as well. See how that goes with him. Those are 3 players that might pass Julius Peppers, but still, great career. Now, when it comes to sacks, again, it's Julius Peppers, like I said, with the most sacks, with 97. By far the leader. Currently, again, Haynes, Marquise Haynes had 14, but he's not with the team anymore. And Thompson was next at 24th, but again, like I said, he's with the Buffalo Bills. So you drop all the way down to the 37th player on the all-time list, which is Derek Brown again. And but Derek Brown only has 8 sacks. So really, this is definitely, you can see this is a weakness of the team right now, their defensive line specifically. And when it comes to sacks all time, again, Julius Pepper, who had, like I said, 97 with Carolina Panthers, ended his career with 159 and a half to finish 5th all time on the unofficial list, 4th all time on the official list. So quite a career for Julius Peppers. Not probably, he definitely was the greatest player on the Carolina Panthers. All right, let's look at seasonal stats, and we'll go back to the quarterbacks. So all-time passing yards with Steve Berline in 1999 passed for 4,436 yards. Cam Newton in 2011 passed for 4,051. Those are the only 2 times, which is amazing. Only 2 times a quarterback has passed for over 4,000 yards for the Carolina Panthers. I don't really expect Bryce Young to do it. I mean, he had 2,877 last year, though he didn't start every game, so, uh, you know, that's not bad. Um, Actually, last year he had 2,403. The year before, his first year, he only had 2,800. As a team, they, let me bring that up, get that chart here real quick. I was just looking at this. As a team, they only passed for about 3,500 yards. So I don't see one quarterback making it to the 4,000 yard mark. So that's a record I think it'll continue to stand at least for a year or so. We'll see how Bryce Young does this next season. And when it comes to touchdowns, again, Steve Berline had 36 touchdowns the same year he threw for all those yards. That's the top one. Cam Newton in 2015 had 35. Those are only 2 times a quarterback's thrown for over 30 touchdowns in a single season. So not that great. Now, like I said, they last season you had 2 quarterbacks for the Carolina Panthers, so none of them really racked up that many yards. Nobody stood out as far as the list all time. Not all time, but 2 other quarterbacks from 2024. Bryce Young ended up 23rd in the NFL in yards passed last season. Uh, so pretty far down the list. And when it comes to touchdowns, he had 15, which also was way down the list at 23rd. So bottom third of the NFL as far as those categories go. Now, when we're looking at in a season interceptions all time, well, that's Kerry Collins holds the top 2 spots, but he only had 21, which is one of the lower numbers for somebody who stands at the top of this list. But 1997, he had 21. Of course, the team hasn't been around as long as other teams, so they're a little newer. Like the say same came in the same time as the Jaguars did. But those are your top. Kerry Collins is the top player as far as interceptions. Really, not that many, and I don't expect to see Bryce Young ever reach that number. He's pretty good accuracy. All right, now when we're looking at sacks, though, that's another category where you see a lot. Steve Berline and Bryce Young both had 62 sacks. Steve Berline did it in 2000, and Bryce Young in 2023 had 62 sacks. He was sacked 62 times. Only players over 50. So that tells you something about the offensive line. And Bryce Young, as a struggling quarterback, and really in his rookie year had almost really nobody to throw to. Didn't have much of an offensive lineup that would start on any other team. So it was really pretty difficult for Bryce Young that first year. All right, let's look at the running backs. D'Angelo Williams, 2008, rushed for 1,515 yards. That's the most ever, even more than Christian McCaffrey, which I was a little surprised by. Um, Chuba Hubbard last year finished 4th for the team as far as rushing all time. He had 1,195 yards. So that's the 4th best for the team. And last season, looking at the NFL as a whole, Jonathan Stewart ended up in the NFL, ended up as the 8th best running back as far as yards go. Looking at touchdowns, D'Angelo Williams had 18. The same year he had all those that had 1,500 plus yards, and that was in 2008. Christian McCaffrey was second. In 2019, he had 15 touchdowns. That's the top 2. Now, Chuba Hubbard last season had the 5th best, double digits with 10. So that's pretty impressive. If he can get 10 again, that would be awesome for the Carolina Panthers. When it comes to touchdowns, though, it was Derrick Henry, Jamar Gibbs, and James Cook all had 16 last season. While Chuba Hubbard ended up 13th in the NFL with 10 touchdowns. rushing. Looking at the wide receivers in general, that would be in a single season. Christian McCaffrey holds the top two spots. 2018, he had 107 receptions in a single season as a running back now. The very next season, he had 116. So pretty impressive uh, there for a running back. So he's the top of the list. As far as wide receivers, it's Steve Smith in 2005 had 103, tied by Adam Thielen again, who was in his 30s in 2023. He was like 33, had 103 receptions. Pretty impressive for him. And then just to round it out, because it's the only other guy, Muhsin Muhammad in 2000 had 102. Those are the only five times by four players that somebody's had 100 or more receptions. Only times. Again, an area where you're hoping to see some players move up this list, and as far as wide receivers go, and when we're looking at the Carolina Panthers, um, they had nobody really that high up the list this past season. Now that's why they drafted Tedero McMillan. I expect next year to see him somewhere at the top, actually with 100 receptions. I'm really thinking it's possible for him to do that. Um, I mean, he's really going to be an outstanding wide receiver for the team. Looking at the wide receivers this past season, where they were as far as receptions go, see the highest was Xavier Leggett with 49. Adam Thielen had 48. That's your top. And Chuba Hubbard as the running back had 43. So definitely an area where they needed some improvement. So we'll see how that works out for him. I fully expect McMillan to be the number one wide receiver on that team right off the bat. And when it comes to yards last season, again, Adam Thielen ended up with the most yards with 615. 615. That's just not that impressive at all. And like I said, it pales in comparison to the rest of the league. It's really an area where you're going to have a lot of improvement. Um, in fact, it's so far down the list. You just had so many players had more than that. Um, Adam Thielen finished 63rd as far as receptions go in yardage. I mean, so definitely an area, and you shouldn't. Adam Thielen's a great help in your receiving department, but should not be leading your team in that category. All right, so let's look at the defense. Wrap this up with the defense. As far as interceptions go, start with that category. Doug Evans in 2001 had 8 interceptions. That's the most ever by the team. This past season, looking at the past season, hopefully I can get this up without too much of a hassle. Last season, Xavier Woods had 3 to lead the team. Michael Jackson had 2. So those are your top 2 players when it comes to interceptions. Not too impressive when you compare to the entire NFL. 3 interceptions isn't really that bad. I mean, you like to see players who have multiple interceptions in a single season. Now, as far as the entire league, it was get this up. Kirby Joseph of Detroit had 9, with 3. Xavier Woods tied for 19th in the NFL. So again, second half of the league as far as that goes. Now, when we're looking at tackles for loss, that would be Luke Kuechly, 20 tackles for loss was the team record. In 2018, he did that. He was a great player too, just could not stay healthy. Charles Johnson and Frank Louvu both had 19. Charles Johnson in 2011 and Frankie Louvu in 2022. So those are your top players as far as tackles for loss. This past season, tackles for loss, Jadavian Clowney, I should get that right, had 9. He's not with the team anymore, so he's like a come in and had 9 and he's gone. Ashawn Robinson had 8. Those are your top 2 last season. So this is again an area where they definitely could use some improvements. And then the last category we're going to look at is sacks. And again, this is an area where they just need a lot of help. But in sacks, Kevin Green had 15 in 1998, and Greg Hardy had 15 in 2013. That's the most ever by a Carolina Panther. Really not that high a amount compared to other teams I've looked at. Last season, Jadeveon Clowney and Ashawn Robinson both had 5.5. So a third of what Kevin Green had. Definitely an area where they need to see some improvements. So as you can tell, this is why you have a team that's 5-12, because of that kind of those kind of numbers. All right, let's look at the team outlook. So they have the team, Vegas does, with an over-under of 6.5 wins. I don't know if they can get to 7 wins or not. I think it might be tough. Their defense was last in points allowed, rushing yards. So now they did sign several free agents, but how are they going to work out? And they only in the draft they only addressed their defense with 2 later round picks. So really not that impressive. That's cons why I don't think they can get to 7. Now on the positive side, they did finish the season out of only 5 wins. They had 4 of them in the last 9 games. So they finished the second half of the season pretty good, comparably compared to the first half. But Bryce Young was benched in the first half, came back in the second half, and it seemed like just a completely different quarterback in a lot of ways. So if he continues on that path, maybe. But honestly, I'm not sure they can get to 7 wins. I think they could get to 6 this year. I just don't know. Now with New Orleans not being that great, possibly they get 7. But I'm going to say no on 7 wins. But we'll see. When you're looking at their fantasy outlooks, Chuba Hubbard's been going about the 4th round, mid 4th round, 45th pick overall as the fantasy pros, RB 18. So you can probably catch him. He's a good pickup if you go, you need a second running back, or you're just not choosing running backs until later rounds because you're going wide receiver, or you picked up a tight end, quarterback, whatever. Chuba Hubbard's a good pickup come the 4th round. He should still be there. And what's good about Hubbard right now is, Ricky O'Dowdle came onto the team, and we'll have to see. They both had 1,000-yard seasons, so I'm not sure how that's going to work out as far as who's going to be carrying the ball more. But Chuba Hubbard's been pretty good for the team. Now, the player you want to keep your eye on is Tedero McMillan, who's going in the beginning of the 6th round. And I say that right now. If you're like me and you're going to have drafts after the preseason, I expect to see him already in the 5th round by then. He's been moving up the draft board, and I think he's going to dominate the team as far as receptions go. And I think a lot of people are starting to recognize him as somebody you definitely want to take a shot at. Right now, like I said, he's been going at the beginning of the 6th round, but we'll see how that goes. Everybody else on the team is going into the 15th round. So if you have some bench space and you got the room, you might want to, pick up Rico Dowdle and just see how it goes with him and Hubbard. And if he's not anybody worth having, you can just drop him. It's not a big loss for you, but it's a possibility. But really, right now, McMillan is the top guy to look at on this particular team. All right, so that's a wrap for the Carolina Panthers. Next time, we'll wrap up the entire NFC South division with a look at the New Orleans Saints. And after that, I'll give you my prediction on who I think will finish 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th in the division. So stick around for that. I'll have some other podcasts as well that outside of the team, looking at the teams. My next podcast will be a look at one record that for each team that I think will be broken by a player on that team. And we'll just see. I'll go through every team in the NFL. One record I'll look at per team. So that should be fun. So check that out. And again, we'll be back to the finishing up the NFC South in a couple of podcasts. All right. Appreciate you listening. Like and subscribe. That would be great. You can check out my podcasts at YouTube, Just the Stats NFL. Also, of course, on Apple, Spotify, and other podcast sources. Also, you can contact me by email at justthestatsnfl@gmail.com. Find me on Facebook, X, Instagram. Appreciate you listening. And that is a wrap for this episode of Just the Stats NFL. Until next time, I am out.